Military personnel of Reddit, what's the best, weirdest, funniest punishment you've seen handed down by a superior? USMC here. In our unit we had one guy that would constantly hum songs. Well, one day our CO had enough of his behavior, so he tells him to report to his locker. So he goes to his locker and stands in front of it. CO tells him to get inside the locker. When he does, he shuts and locks the door with him inside. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a quarter and pushes it through the vent holes and tells the guy to start singing. And tells him that whenever someone puts a quarter in the slot he was to sing another song. This went on for 6 hours. The guy made around $15 in quarters and we were all in pain from laughing at him. Needless to say, he acquired the name Jukebox and never hummed again. Edit. Whoa. Thanks for the gold. What are they going to do? Bend my dog tags? Take my birthday away? Chuckle chuckle. Yep. Apparently a Navy captain did just that once on purpose by deliberately sailing parallel to the international dateline, then slipping across it right on midnight. Tomorrow suddenly became yesterday and no birthday for you this year, ya chucklehead. In us army basic training, one soldier lost his canteen and asked the drill sergeant if he had seen it. The drill was angry at this for some reason and made the privates wander around for a few hours asking all kinds of inanimate objects if they had seen his canteen. So things like, "Truck, have you seen my canteen?" Double quote. Got caught on basic with my iPod and I ran around the camp for near 2 hours with my iPod over my head shouting I'm a stupid FK for bringing my iPod in the field as the enemy was attacking our camp. I then proceeded to put my iPod in a plastic bag, then taped it onto my helmet, and from there on I responded to private iPod. When my instructor shouted play I had to sing. Skip I had to switch song, etc. It lasted 2 weeks. Even during the night when I had 2 hours to sleep. Guy in basic dropped the biggest turd you've ever seen in the commode. So he shows the drill sergeants, who then make him suit up in full combat gear, weapon and all. And guard it all night. The whole halt. Who goes there? Pretty amusing. My brother told me that when he was in basic, a drill sergeant yelled at this guy to beat his face, meaning to do push-ups. Said guy had no clue it meant that, and promptly punched himself in the face. Really hard. And fell to the ground. The drill sergeant had to walk that one off, and my brother said you could hear him laughing hysterically as he walked behind a building. Not totally relevant. But I figured I'd share. Edit. Thank you all for the sweet, tender, juicy karma. You honor me greatly. I can almost definitely guarantee I'm going to screw it up. Thank you. All the same. Marine boot camp. We had a guy that somehow got his watch through the indoc. They take all your crap when you first get there. Well, the DIs found out he had it when they saw him wearing it one day. So they put him in the squad bay trash can and put the lid on it. Every time they walked by and kicked it, he'd pop out with his watch and yell, "Sir, the time on deck is 09:45. And then go back into his can like the freaking Grouch from Sesame Street. It was really hard not to laugh at that. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. A fellow lance corporal at the time let out a sneeze. Huge snot rocket pops out and lands on his cheek. I mean, just one beast of a thing. My sergeant standing in front of him talking to him while this happened let out a "what the FCK, you nasty bitch." Put it back. And right back up it went. Funniest tea I have seen. Edit. Gold? You sir or madam must be confused. Now notice that spider on the wall behind you. Pocket sand and run. Thanks. Seen a guy on a full body waiver for exercises. The instructor gave him 1000 smiley frownies. Smile then frown is one. The hardest, easiest exercise ever. Edit. For those who don't know, a full body waiver is something to the degree of cannot lift objects. No walking for more than 200 meters in one setting. No strenuous activities, etc. Basically making all normal physical activities out of the question. I wrote a bad check while stationed in Korea. $2.06 over the limit. My punishment? to cut the parade field grass with scissors by morning. In the Marine Corps, when we really FK'd up, we would go fishing. It is where you squat down like you're sitting in a chair and hold a shovel out in front of you in the air like a fishing pole. Then you just sit there for a long time, and if the shovel would start to droop down, my sergeant would grab the tip of the shovel and start to shake it and make me pretend I was reeling in the big one. One time me and a buddy got in trouble together, so they made him fish and me flop around on the deck like a fish he had already caught for almost an hour. One of my friends from my first base and I were swapping basic stories, and I think he had the scariest. On the first day of third week they hadn't performed up to standards, and the MTI told them he'd be staying late that night to try to fix them. The MTI calls his wife to let her know he'd missed dinner and would be home late, and she blew the fuck up. She was screaming at the MTI about how he's just using his job as an excuse, how he doesn't even care about her. And while all this is going on, the MTI is just pleading with her. She hangs up on him, and the MTI looks at the flight with this expression of cold hate and says he was going to his office for a minute to think of an appropriate way to punish the flight for their shit. Basic training is a lot of talk. The MTIs can PT you until your body gives out and scream at you, but they can't actually hurt you. In that moment though, as the room waited for the MTI to come back, they weren't so sure that would be the case. He was going to make them pay. And my friend said that was the only time in basic he felt true fear. It turns out, it was all an act. The MTI had had that genuinely happen during a previous flight, and it had terrified them into compliance so well he got his wife to pull it off every flight afterwards. USMC boat. One kid on fire watch failed to notice a DI coming on deck, which means you immediately salute and report your post. So the DI ran up to the rifle rack, smacked it, and yelled, "Bam! You're dead." He tried to respond, but was cut off by the DI. "You're a ghost now. You can't talk. Go act like a ghost." Double quote. Then the kid had to wander around the squad bay for the rest of his 2 hours fire watch acting like a ghost. And he took that responsibility with a stride. Plenty of ridiculous I'm a goos noises and F-king with people's racks. We were all laughing our asses off for the next hour till our senior got pissed. Edit. Acting like a boat. We were deployed in Iraq and a guy was pissing in water bottles instead of walking to the bathroom at night. This is a common thing. But this guy wasn't getting rid of the bottles. He'd keep them underneath his cot for some reason. When the first sergeant found this out, he made the guy report to the commander while holding all of his piss bottles in a box in front of him. They tore into this guy while he was holding a box of his own urine. Officers can't punish soldiers with any punishment that doesn't follow guidelines. That said, they can be ordered some stupid things. My friend got ordered to move a box weighing about 50 pounds from the barracks to the shower every 2 minutes for 2 hours. The officer's reason for it was because he didn't know where to put it and was trying to decide if it should be at the barracks or the shower. In the end, he ended up telling him to load it up in the truck. A recruit in USMC boot camp thought he was special because he was an Eagle Scout. The drill instructor picked up on this and during PT took him into the woods and made him build a nest. Then he had to squat over it in order to keep his eggs warm. Week 1 in Army basic training, we had a soldier ask for an omelette in chow line, which was not allowed because there was absolutely no time to make custom omelettes for every single basic training soldier. The cooks started making the omelette when a drill sergeant asked what the hell was going on. The basic training soldier replied, "Go around." Drill sergeant: "I'm waiting on an omelette." Needless to say, this was the wrong thing to say and do week 1 in basic training. Our platoon motto was henceforth "Go around." Drill sergeant: "I'm waiting on an omelette," and the basic training soldier was henceforth named PVT Omelette. In basic, when going to throw out some trash, left my rifle, which you are not supposed to do. Myself and 2 of my buddies had to hold on to our assault packs in one hand like a shield and long sticks in the other like a spear. Then we had to stack up in a line on a tree and push with our shields for 5 minutes with our spears raised yelling war cries. Apparently the Spartans did this for training. And apparently if I don't have my rifle in a combat situation, I will need to know how to do this. My grandfather, career vet, had a story about a guy who kept getting things taken away from him as punishment. Apparently before it was over, he had no socks or shoelaces, no underwear, and they took the inside part of his helmet. Another oldie but goodie is making a private hugger tree. It all depends on how you take it. Some privates thought it was funny to have to hug a tree, but for some reason some of them thought it was really embarrassing. I once spent 12 hours cleaning screens on Windows. That doesn't sound bad, does it? Try this. Find a small wire about the same gauge as the holes in your Windows screen. Gently push the wire through the hole in the screen to make sure that the hole is empty. Repeat for 3 minutes, then look away from the screen. Anything weird with your eyes? Try it for hours. Had a guy in a warehouse drop a pallet load of assorted nuts and bolts off a forklift. Boxes broke open. A 100,000 little nuts and bolts everywhere of various sizes. He had to sweep them into a pile. Repair the boxes. Fit each nut to a screw to make sure of the size. The pile was then inspected. Then he had to remove each nut from the screw and place the screw in the proper box. Then place the nut in the proper box. Probably 25 or 50 per box, I don't remember. Doesn't sound too bad, right? Took 3 12-hour days. He wasn't allowed to sit down. He had to bend over at the waist. Pick up a tiny nut and screw. Straighten up. Screw them together, then bend over for another. More than 100,000 times. Think about it. A private put his camo on looking like Gene Simmons. He had it on for an hour before the drill sergeant put him upside down in a tree shouting, "I'm a chameleon, no one can see me." Military kid here. Watched my dad tell a marine to paint rocks because the guy said that the motor pool looked like shit. He spent 6 hours painting every rock white. It rained that night and he had to start over the next day. Yeah. My dad is a douche cake. When I was a young private in the infantry, back in about 1993, I got in trouble for having a 6-inch knife on my field gear. Knives of that size had to be stored in the arms room, go figure. I got a summarized Article 15, basically a slap on the wrist, which was 7 days extra duty. 7 days confined to barracks. The extra duty was cleaning up after the duty day, mopping and waxing the floors, taking out the trash from the admin offices, etc. Confinement to the barracks was meant to be the harsh part. But we lived in a semi-remote area of post. So AAFES opened a bar for the area in the basement of the barracks. Needless to say, I spent my 7 days confined to the barracks in the basement, enjoying some frosty beverages, dots, and bar food. To this day, I still don't know if my commander at the time was stupid enough to not know that there was a bar in our basement, or cool enough to not cars. Edit. I just found him on Facebook. And he did. In fact, cars a lot. When we were heading to Iraq, we had to pass through Kuwait. Kuwait being the transient hub for soldiers heading to and leaving Iraq. It is very chaotic. As a result of jet lag and the chaotic nature of Kuwait, my buddy had brought his weapon to the shower, but forgot to grab it on his way back to the tent. Shortly after he left, a sergeant came bursting through the door to see him sitting on his cot messing around with his new video camera he had just purchased to bring on the deployment. His punishment was to get up, take his weapon and camera, and go sit in the community shower area and make sure no one else leaves their weapon in the shower for the night. So, what you would see when you went to take off your clothes to get in the shower was a fully dressed guy with a video camera just sitting there looking at you. I was a USAF firefighter. OFNG at station did not properly do checkouts on his vehicle and didn't make sure his water tank and on tires on apparatus were good. After downtime, my fire chief told him to don his gear on and grab a big trash bag. He made him stand on the flight line side of the fire station facing the tower and told him that the weather system was down and they needed him to stand there to get the directions of the wind. He was there for 2 hours. Every time he put his hands down he would walk up to him and threaten to write him up and made up an affy. Army here. Whilst in Iraq, guy in unit got in trouble and had to clean every porta-john from the motor pool back to the tents. That was a lot of latrines. And you can't even imagine what an Iraqi porta-john looks and smells like. Either way, dude was puking and it took him about 11 hours. Dude was not a shitbag after that. I always thought the basics were best. Like the duffel bag drag if you didn't lock your locker when you should have. You had to pack all your gear into 2 duffels and carry them around all day. Or if you got caught fighting you had to hold hands with that person the rest of the day. I use that one on my kids now. We had a waiver soldier that couldn't be smoked via PT and couldn't stand for extended periods during work. Dude was a huge FCK stick. Always mouthing off and being lazy. We had him sit in a camping chair and fill 10 sandbags with a tablespoon. Not military personnel. But told to me by someone who was. Guy had to dig a 6 feet deep hole and bury the newspaper that the CO had just finished reading. He digs the hole, buries the newspaper, and covers up the hole. It takes basically all day. He gets back to the CO and tells him he has buried the newspaper like he asked. The CO then asks him what was the date on that newspaper. He doesn't know. So he has to go get the newspaper he buried and see what date it is. Rebury it. And tell his company. It was supposed to teach him the lesson of needing to pay attention to details. I was at a Coast Guard base for an NJROTC Joint Service Leadership Training, JSLT, when some of us decided to ask a teacher about stories from his boot camp. This is my favorite. In the mess hall. You aren't allowed to look out the windows. So one of the recruits looks out a window. And the CC sees him. To punish him he had to stand at the window with his cups over his eyes. Like binoculars. For the rest of chow with the CC randomly yelling, "Shipmate. What do you see?" Double quote. Edit. "I see birds, sir." "What kind?" "Seagulls, sir." Comma other edit. "You can't look out the windows because they don't want you to." It's pretty damn hard when the main wall is all windows. During an inspection in basic training, a piece of lint was found in our dryer. I ordered to handcuff the intruder and construct a detention facility where the intruder could be interrogated. I was to have an in-depth report on who he was, where he was from, and what he was doing in the building. Chair force here. I feel like BMT instructors get away with a lot of crap. So I'll share my favorite one from BMT. Every chair force personnel knows that BMT is a whole lot of folding clothes and making beds. Nothing more than that other than your occasional classes. So one day, while we were being really slow at making our beds, the MTI got really pissed and started flipping lockers and bunks all over the dorm. This motherfucker then proceeded to pick 7 random numbers, our numbers designated which trainee got punished, and pulled us aside and said, "I expect each of your bunks to be made up in inspection order in 10 minutes. In the shower. Dot." As he walked to the latrine he then said, "Oh. And bring your wet weather gear." Do you have any idea how f***ing hard it is to make a wrinkle-free bed with wet sheets? 2 guys were grab-assing in formation. We were downrange doing some field training exercises and our drill sergeant caught them. He made them hold hands together all day, also assigned them as battle buddies for the day. So they had to go everywhere together. He told them that any time another drill sergeant asked why the FCK they were holding hands they were only allowed to say one thing. He told them to shout it, "Because we love each other." Drill sergeant. Double quote. An airman I know forgot we had to all come in on a Monday morning. He was on swings and was still out of town. He finally came in 6 hours later. Our sergeant told him to stand at attention and left to do something and completely forgot about him. He stood at attention for 2 hours while another airman jokingly poked him with sticks. A basic training story. We were practicing taking apart and putting together our M16s. We were instructed to not let any piece fall on the ground or get lost. Especially the firing pin. Sure enough, you hear the ringing of a firing pin that just hit the ground. Our TI comes running out. That trainee had to lay on the ground in front of our TI. Every time a different trainee walked by, the trainee in the ground had to yell, "Watch out, I'm a firing pin." For the next hour, our TI called every trainee over one at a time. Not my story. It was told to me by a Marine back in high school when I was in JROTC. He said back when he was in boot camp, his group was told they were going to be watching a movie that day. Apparently someone in charge had said to give his group a break that day, and they were to watch Full Metal Jacket. The guy, drill sergeant I think he was, who was telling them they were to watch the movie that day told them something around the lines of, "I don't know why they are giving you guys the right to watch a movie. The Marines in the movie never get to watch one. But orders are orders, so you will watch this movie." He then put everyone in formation, ordered them into parade rest, had one guy stand in front of formation and hold the VHS tape in front of him. The drill sergeant then said, "The film says that it is 118 minutes long. And so you will stand here and watch the movie for 118 minutes. Then he walked away and left the Marines there all standing and staring at the VHS tape in the hands of the Marine assigned to hold it up for everyone to watch. We had a private keep leaving his weapon unsecured in Iraq. So his squad leader took the whole thing apart and gave him a scavenger hunt list of all the senior enlisted NCOs he could talk to about turning that particular component of his rifle back. Each NCO proceeded to smoke the living shit out of him until he could put it all back together. A married O5 in his 30s was caught having sex with an E3 in her 20s on my ship. CO sent her to another ship and made him call his wife to confess his infidelity. This was in the middle of a deployment. A junior Marine failed to properly inventory our gear and got smart with his section chief when confronted. Section chief then takes him to parking lot and makes the young Marine lay down on the handicap parking stencil and mimic the shape. I was in A school and rolled out late. Showed up to class late, unshaven and with boots but no socks. My instructor took notice and made me stand in the hallway and tell everyone that walked by that I was trying to grow a mustache and my feet stink for a good hour. USMC here. Lots of stories. But this happened to me and I thought it was funny. I was in the Mojave Desert doing mock vehicle searches. It was at least 118 degrees and our platoon sergeant told us that if you had any of the overheating symptoms to report them. So I was feeling a little dizzy, so I told him I needed to get off my feet for a bit. "No problem," he said, and sent me to a walled off tent that the Navy docs set up to cool off a bit. Anyway, as soon as I got in there, the Navy docs asked me why I came in and I said I was a little dizzy and needed to sit down. Well, they stripped me down naked, threw me in a tub of ice, and shoved a thermometer up my ass. Damn USGT. Coming out of PX one day, a soldier forgot to salute a butter bar. So the LT went off, screaming about proper military respect to officers and such. This E3 is losing it. About to cry. This is in front of the PX, visible to everyone. So the LT made the PFC salute him repeatedly until he was satisfied. Unfortunately, a CSM was walking by, who saw this happening. He walked up to the PFC, asked him what he did wrong. After a very brief explanation, he asked the LT why after everything he just said about military respects and such, he didn't return any of the PFC's salutes. CSM made them both stand there saluting each other until he finished shopping. This guy in boot camp wasn't yelling loud enough for the drill instructors, so they made him stick his head inside one of those orange Igloo coolers and scream volume, where you had volume, for what seemed like 3 hours. I was laughing so hard on the inside because laughing on the outside is bad news. I remember when I was in AIT, I watched a guy have to play Superman. I was a 92R in the US Army, parachute rigger. While in rigger school we were learning to pack personnel parachutes and this guy forgot to clip the chute's risers to the pack tray and told the instructor he was done with this step of class. The instructor came over, inspected his work and started talking to him like he was Superman. This guy was confused for a couple seconds until he looked down and realized what he did wrong. So our instructor figured muscle memory was the way to go and made him put the parachute harness on minus the chute and run all over the pack shed with his arms out like he was flying shouting I am Superman. I don't need a parachute. For a good solid 20 minutes. Pretty funny and distracting. Boot camp. Guy throws up. DI sees vomit. Tells recruit to get rid of said vomit. Recruit starts digging. No. Says DI. Put it in your pocket. Says DI. Recruit puts vomit in pockets. Training continues. My first sergeant made us wax a sidewalk once. It took us several days to build the wax up. And there was sand and dead grass and tea stuck in it. But we finally managed to get it to shine. He immediately told us we were stupid and that a waxed sidewalk was dangerous. Then made us go and get wire brushes and remove all the wax by hand and broom. Scrubbing it with the wire brushes. Buddy of mine's brother sent him a letter from basic bragging about how much easier his basic training was compared to when my buddy went through. So, knowing he would have to open it in front of the drill instructors, he sent him a care package which included one of those novelty inflatable SX sheep. A week or so later my friend got back a profanity-filled letter saying that he was now the joke of his basic class. The drill instructors saw the sheep and apparently made him keep it as a pet. They gave him a water bowl to keep by his bunk. Gave him a collar and leash and made him take it for walks. Etc. A guy I know was at basic training for the British Army, rifles, and he falls asleep while supposed to be doing block jobs. The sergeant catches him and hands him a large sack of coal. Then orders him to get a pot of white paint and paint the coal. After around 3 hours of painting said coal, the sergeant wanders back over and says, "You stupid bastard. Coal's supposed to be black. Paint it black." Double quote. USMC. The SDI made this one recruit, Paris Island, who was always the FCK up, sit in front of a mirror for hours. He had to first point at himself and say I'm XXXX and I'm the most stupid marine in the platoon, then point at the mirror and say no. You're XXXX and you're the most stupid marine in the platoon. Full stop. Full stop. In basic training, a friend stepped on and killed a bug. The drill sergeant then made him dig a human-sized grave and bury the bug so as to teach him that taking a life is serious business and for it not to be taken lightly. To show there are physical mental effects of doing such. At basic while outside the PX waiting for haircuts another private pointed out a squirrel in the parking lot. One of the drills looks at him and says well don't just stand there dumbass. Chase the fucker. Hilarity ensued. Navy here while stationed in Pensacola for training. I was walking past the mega building, basically a huge schoolhouse with several airplane hangars, on my way to the commissary to get lunch. In the distance ahead of me I can see a group of officer candidates marching in formation and one of the drill instructors starts running towards me. I have a minor panic attack as I am relatively new to the Navy myself. The D.I., which was a gunnery sergeant, told me to salute the oncoming group, to which I explain that I am in civilian clothes and cannot salute. The gunny tells me he knows and immediately I catch his drift. As I walk by I salute and several people salute me back. In exception of the parade leader no one in formation should salute. The D.I. immediately started yelling at those poor souls and later in the day I see those same guys saluting everything. They had to salute and greet trees and squirrels. Good morning MR. Tree. Good morning MR. Squirrel. Haha. Out doing company live fires a brand new private went into the MRE box and rat FK'd, dug through all the selections to find his favorite, before the rest of his platoon. He got himself a nice spaghetti and meat sauce. His SGT team leader sees us and makes the private dump out the MRE and do a specified exercise for each and every separate item in the ration, including all the little salt packets and condiments, and can only stop that exercise once his team leader finishes reading off the ingredients and nutrition facts. So much sweat. In boot camp a recruit whispered to another recruit, wouldn't it be nice to get in the showers with petty officer? Insert our female petty officer's name here. Only he didn't whisper quiet enough and she heard him. The whole division has to go into the showers and do push-ups in freezing cold water with her standing in there asking if we liked showering with her. This whole f-king thread has simultaneously made me regret never joining the military and also immensely thankful that I never joined the military. My dad was in the Coast Guard. One day he didn't have time to shave and was forced to skip all day singing "This Is How I Shave My Face." I remember when in boot camp, some guy shot his rifle when there was a no fire order during an exercise. His punishment was to go search for the bullet until he found it. My father, who went on to become a drill instructor, was ordered to do mountain climbers indefinitely. His superior walked off, knowing that this particular Marine would continue his exercise unabated. However, after about 15 minutes my father stops. D.I. comes out and says, omitted, "Why the hell did you stop climbing that mountain?" Double quote. "Sir. I made it to the top, sir." Double quote. Flabbergasted. The D.I. just looks at him and says, "Well, start climbing your ass back down," and walks off. About 5 minutes goes by this time and my dad ends his exercising and the D.I. comes back out and says, omitted, "The FCK are you doing? It's only been 5 minutes." Double quote. "Sir. It's faster going down. Sir." Double quote. I don't know how he was punished for this, but he probably ran suicides until he puked or something. In Coast Guard boot camp the COs would make kids sound the foghorn as they were marching around if it got real foggy out. Every 5 minutes or so you'd just hear a kid do his best impression. For some reason my family thought it would be a good idea to send me candy on Halloween while I was still in boot camp. Every night from then on I would do wall sits while having miniature Hershey bars pelted at my head from his office.